Hello, welcome to this week's program of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. My name is Farheen, and I thank you all for joining us today. Each week, we connect with and hear from speakers who usually have a message focused on our love for innovation, entrepreneurship, and education. Today, we have a presentation by Whittney Tom, the Program Manager for Strategic Partnerships at Techsoup. Whittney curates and expands access to resources for nonprofits globally. Her passion for cultivating partnerships and executing programs across organizations and companies is driven by her commitment to increasing opportunities for equity and equality in society. She manages 3 of Techsoup's top 10 revenue-generating partnerships and works to grow programs that increase access and use of technology for civil society globally. With that said, Whittney, please take it away.
Thanks, Corinne. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to meet you all. Excited for the discussion after. I'm going to share my screen. All right, let me know when you can see that. You get a thumbs up?
Looks good.
All right, perfect. So, so as Corinne said, my name is Whittney. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you about Techsoup. I've been with Techsoup for just over 2 years, and I'm on our strategic partnerships team. And really what I want to kind of come away with is explain what Techsoup's role is, trying to connect nonprofits to resources. Really as basic as that, of just being this kind of dynamic bridge that is really trying to advocate on behalf of the entire nonprofit sector globally and meet their needs with partnerships. And this is mainly around how to leverage technology. So our agenda, I'm just gonna do a quick overview, talk about our digital transformation initiative as one specific initiative we're focused on going forward, and talk a little bit about our growth capital campaign. And I might switch over and talk to you about a couple ways that we do our work. So first, I'm just gonna move the video. I can see this. Who is our target audience? Who are we trying to serve? So Techsoup is really focused on the NGO sector. And something that people don't know is that the nonprofit sector is quite large. There's 12.3 million NGOs in this world, which represent a total of about 4.5% of global GDP. That's equivalent to the manufacturing sector on its own, which is really quite incredible if you also think about how many people the nonprofit sector employs, which is about 250 million people. I think something that we have in common as the nonprofit sector due to financial structures of nonprofits, as well as just general role in civil society in a lot of countries, we're budget constrained and we really struggle to adopt and access technology. And I think the last part that I want to talk about is the NGO sector. I think a lot of you on this call are probably very familiar with this, whether you volunteer with Rotary Club in the field, or you work with maybe a food bank, or you work with a homeless shelter, or you might be part of a gardening club. I think what we're trying to do is the nonprofit sector fills a gap. And we're really trying to fill the gap by serving billions of the world's most vulnerable people, addressing the most critical problems like disaster response and healthcare and quality education. So who is Techsoup, and where do we play in this large NGO sector? So we are a nonprofit social enterprise, and as I said in the beginning, we are really just trying to connect NGOs to mission-critical resources worldwide. We really like this photo because we have our beautiful Bay Bridge in the background, and it really symbolizes that we try to serve as this dynamic bridge, leveraging technology to enable connections and innovative solutions for a more equitable planet. We serve nonprofits of all mission types, and we do this through a lot of different ways. The 2 most basic ways we do this is a nonprofit registers with Techsoup or a partner NGO around the world, which I'll talk to you about in a bit. They choose what they're eligible for. It might be a service, it might be a product, it might be a solution. They read our blog post for free, and then we connect them directly to our offers on our site, or we do the validation and we send them to our partners' website. So that's the very basic way that Techsoup connects NGOs to the resources. And what our reach is in a year, Techsoup's programs reach about 144,000 nonprofits a year, and that's across 236 countries and territories. I have a bunch of numbers here on the side about our sector engagements. We have almost 1 million newsletter subscribers. We have over 280,000 social media followers, and we really are able to tap into the philanthropic sector, so that means like foundations and donors, and we facilitate over 200 corporations and foundations for their philanthropic activities. So that means that if you're a foundation and you want to give to a small organization in Bangladesh, but you want to make sure there's due diligence done, we do that validation on behalf of that foundation, and then we say, this is a validated nonprofit from Techsoup, and then we can help facilitate that donation. And the big thing that I'm going to talk about is digital transformation. I think there's this big buzzword going around Silicon Valley and the world about how is technology transforming the way we do business, and how is technology transforming the way that nonprofits are serving our communities. Something that I'm really proud of is that Techsoup has enabled the distribution of over $1.6 billion in donated or discounted resources. And where that money goes is represented in this map. I'm really proud of the work that our organization's done over the last 30 years, but primarily since about 2005, instead of kind of creating, we realized where we started in the United States, and we realized very quickly that the model that we established here in the United States could be used around the world. And so instead of creating little mini Techsoups around the world, we identified now 60 partner NGOs around the world who did similar capacity building work for organizations, and some of them had a specific technology focus. And we now have a global network of these partner NGOs that help us deliver our services around the world. And we have net squared local events. We don't just do online connections, but we have in-person events in 41 countries. So here's just a little map where you can see where our net squared events are around the world, and then our partner NGOs are in all of the geographic regions. And something that I think really grounds Techsoup and our strategy moving forward is that our vision is really strong in that we want technology to be enabling civil society to do their work. And that means being a multi-stakeholder platform so that all different types of groups can come to us. So while our primary beneficiaries are these civil society organizations, nonprofits, but we're really trying to ultimately keep the communities at the center of that ecosystem. And we have change agents who might be in a corporation at a social impact team, or they might be a change agent who's an executive director in that civil society organization, or it might be a local politician who really wants to help their civil society community in their city really leverage technology to meet the needs of the people. And then we have civil society supporters who maybe are really hoping to understand where they might get involved. And in order to do this, Techsoup is really focused on a nonprofit, individual, organization's digital transformation journey. And what we mean by digital transformation journey is that we're hoping to bring nonprofits along this journey, going from a non-digital entity all the way into an organization that can innovate with technology to ensure that they are adequately able to reach their community members through the use of technology. I think it's a good time to talk about how Techsoup started, which is that our founder was living here in the Bay Area, and he noticed that, this was in the early 1980s, and he noticed that this company called Microsoft had a lot of technology that businesses were using. And these businesses were really able to expedite the way that they were doing business. And so he went to Microsoft and said, hey, we have a ton of nonprofits who are interested in receiving your technology. They don't really know how to use it, and it seems like it's quite a bit expensive. How can we partner together? And so what this looked like in the beginning was really just Daniel, our founder, going to Microsoft with his car, picking up some hardware, and then distributing it around the Bay Area. And now what it looks like is that we have a platform that brings together foundations and corporations and facilitating any sort of distribution of resources, including technology, to these organizations around the world. And so this transformation journey now is expedited and extremely important because of the move to the cloud that's now making hardware and kind of on-premise and older technology that used to be running our organizations in the 1980s and 90s and early 2000s to now we're seeing this big push into software as a service and other online technology services that are really helping fuel the way that nonprofits can operate and hopefully innovate to meet the needs of our communities. We have a resource map for how we plan to help organizations across this journey. So we have a digital assessment tool we're working on, a skills assessment tool for individuals, and online training. The digital assessment tool is about to be launched in the US next year, and what we're in the beta phase of now is really an organization takes this assessment tool, and then it spits out based on what the answers are of like your size, number of people, your annual operating budget, the type of services you do, the type of data you might collect, and then we make recommendations tailored to your organization. And I am really excited about this because before, when I went back to the slide of how the two ways that Techsoup meets the needs and connects NGOs to resources, that was really through like a very self-serve area. And what we kept being asked from nonprofits around the world was, hey, but can you give me a little bit more guidance? Can you please tell me, like, I know that we can improve the way we're using technology, but can you give me my organization's specific recommendations? So that's what this is in response to. And the future capabilities are really around how we're going to use this tool globally and how we integrate all of these tools to really make a holistic recommendation of how to utilize technology as a nonprofit. And I want to switch over to this and just talk to you about who specifically we serve now. And I think it's interesting to show what the budget sizes are of the nonprofits. You'll see that the majority of our nonprofits have under $1 million in annual revenue. So when it comes to being an organization who might be having 3 full-time staff and you really don't know how you can afford to utilize a full tech stack of technology from accounting to productivity applications like Office 365 or Tableau for like reporting and data analytics, you really don't know what to do and you really don't know how you're going to afford it. So, and you're also not going to then go to each vendor or technology company and say, hey, can you negotiate a special price for me? I'm a nonprofit, that kind of thing. So what Techsoup does is we keep our thumb on the pulse and identify needs in the nonprofit sector specifically for the smallest nonprofits, and we advocate on behalf of the whole sector to these companies and negotiate unique offers for nonprofits that we can offer on our NGO marketplace. We also serve larger organizations, and we're constantly thinking about, making sure that when companies are designing technology for enterprises, they keep nonprofits in mind and advocate for those offers. And then this is my last slide. I just want to talk a little bit more about the group of changemakers we're trying to support. And you'll see, again, it's a huge range from organizations doing youth activities, libraries, health services, sports and athletic recreation. So we really don't discriminate on the type of work that civil society does. What we do is we really try to be neutral and support all of them. And I'm just going to switch back to the other one and just talk to you about something really exciting we have going on, which is our growth capital campaign. So for anyone who's worked for an organization before, you know that we are budget constrained. A lot of the times organizations are over half funded by grants, and so it leaves little room, I think, for a lot of strategic investment in the organization. And so what Techsoup learned is that in order to keep up with the needs of nonprofits for technology, we needed to start our own growth capital campaign. And in order to continue meeting 1.1 million organizations, we decided that we needed to double that amount because, as I said earlier, there's about 12 million nonprofits, so we really aren't even meeting half. And so we're trying to double this number in the next 3 to 5 years and trying to increase the market value of in-kind tech and funding facilitated by $4 billion in the next 3 years. And in order to do that, we're seeking $11.5 million of growth capital campaign. And we're doing that through an innovative approach through a Securities Exchange Commission Reg A Tier 2 offer, which is a bunch of jargon to mean that similar to when a company IPOs or goes public, you can now invest in us, and you can see anyone who does between $50 to $2,500, you get 2% interest back if you invest in us. We have this next level, which is $2,500 to $50,000, you get 3.5% interest back, and then if you do $50,000 or more, you get 5% interest back. And this was because our CEO and our board really wanted anyone to be able to invest in our growth capital campaign, and someone who might work for a nonprofit, we hope might invest because they're really familiar with Techsoup, and so we wanted to keep this minimum down. And we think it's a really innovative way, instead of going and continuing to try to get grants to invest in our strategic growth to meet the nonprofit needs in the world, we decided to take this growth capital campaign approach. We raised about 70% of this in the first now 12 months. And I think the last thing I want to say on this is that we have a really well-defined social return on this investment, and it's that we will nearly double the number of nonprofits we reach. And for every $100 that's invested, we expect to distribute an additional $47,000 in needed resources. And that's the end of my overview. But hopefully I'm really looking forward to questions, and I know there was a lot of content there, but we're really excited to serve nonprofits around the world, and really have been valuing what our role is, both to be able to leverage all of the technology companies who are very invested in nonprofits' digital transformation journeys, as well as trying to understand the needs from us as well.
Whitney, thank you so much for your presentation. Before we go into the question and answer period, I wanted to just quickly introduce the other members on the call. So when I say your name, please wave. We have Rory in Houston, Sandy in Fremont, Shags, I think you're in Walnut Creek, Rush in San Jose, and then Caleb is in Oregon. So with that said, does anyone have any, want to start out with questions? Rushton.
So Whitney, thanks for the presentation, and a thanks to Techsoup. I run a nonprofit that has benefited from Techsoup's programs for a good decade. I think we've been, getting software at reduced prices, over that time. So thank you very much. I'm curious about your capital campaign. That seems a really innovative way to approach long-term sustainability with what you got going. It shows rates of return on those investments. First question, I assume that's an annual rate of return?
Yes, I believe it is an annual rate of return.
Okay, cool. And to what extent has starting something like that generated new connections with businesses or organizations that are really curious about the model? So, and let me give you a little bit of background. I'm in education. I'm really interested in schools that work very differently than what we traditionally think of when we think of schools. In doing what you're doing, have you connected with a lot of really unusual nonprofits?
I think I wish that my colleague was on the phone with me who could talk a lot more about this. His name is Ken Sonoto, and he's our VP of development. But I would say that it's spurred a lot of conversations about Techsoup's reach in the world and our strategic way of approaching our sustainability as a nonprofit. So the types of conversations that I actually think that it spurred for us and bringing new stakeholders to our community are actually people who are really interested in impact investing, and people who are interested in having a way to define what the social impact is of an investment. I think it took, frankly, over 2 years for us to figure out the model of how to go about the Securities Exchange Commission. Well, it took us about 2 years to figure out, the type, like the Reg A Type 2 thing. That took a really long time to figure out what that model was going to look like. And then it took time to do the entire application process. And I think what we've been trying to do is share all of those lessons so that maybe other organizations don't have to take quite as long to figure out what works for them. So we have a number of blog posts that we've posted about that lesson. And we also were part of, in San Francisco, I don't know if you've heard of the Social Capital Conference, SOCAP, that took place last month. It's an annual conference, and it's all about social capital and kind of more like impact investing and innovative solutions to reaching needs. And we did a panel with a couple of our funders, part of the Growth of Capital campaign, to really share those lessons. For me, something that I thought was interesting is that my counterpart at VMware is one of my partners that I work with and the account that I manage. And it was really interesting to see the foundation director, Jessamine Shin, work through how to work with their board of investors to think about how to invest in a nonprofit in this way. Because I think a lot of foundations and corporations are used to just donating grants to organizations. And what we were saying is, we don't want that actually. Like, we want to repay you because we're very confident in the way that we will utilize this money. And I think that we gained a lot of, I think, brand awareness and I think like reputation strength through this process. And it brought in people from companies that we've approached, a lot of different people who we wouldn't normally work for on a specific technology offer for nonprofits. It brought in people from across the company, and I think that only deepens our partnership with these companies, and it makes them really listen to us about what we're advocating for on behalf of the global sector. I don't think that specifically answered your question of like specific nonprofits, but I think that I can say that we absolutely want to share everything we've learned, and we've been trying to do that. So I'll send some blog posts afterwards. And I'm happy to connect you with that team as well, Rushton, if you want to learn more.
Great. I think Caleb, you had your hand up. Why don't you go first? Oh, you're muted. Do you want me to unmute you?
Do it.
There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, Freen. Thanks for presenting, Whitney. Like Rush and I have founded a couple of nonprofits and learned along the way that TechSoup is a big boon, especially for a new nonprofit. You have very limited capital before you've developed your funding streams, and the services that you provide for little. Rushton didn't highlight on it. It isn't just reduced; it's almost eliminated cost on a lot of these things. It's so far below what it would take for a new nonprofit to purchase those things separately. So thank you, of course. And I'm sure it's on the website. I just haven't gone, and it seemed like maybe more of a fun off the cuff question. The name TechSoup, do you know if there's a story, or was that just catchy and it popped up? Did the founders like soup? Was the first nonprofit a soup company? I mean, I just thought that was potentially a intriguing, but maybe informative, useful story for you to facilitate some more information coming our way.
You know, okay, so our name actually used to be CompuMentor, like computer mentor, and then it changed in the early 2000s to TechSoup. And in our week, I don't know where TechSoup came from, but I think what they were going for is that there's like, you know, a combination of different things that we offer, so it's kind of like a soup. And one thing I can say is that we have weekly by the cup newsletters where we put a lot of our education content in there, and it's free. And in each by the cup, we used to then attach a soup recipe in every single newsletter. So,
well, I'm a realtor.
I'll have to go back and dig.
That's really standard marketing for a lot of professions. The age-old include a recipe. So that's funny that that's actually part of your story of TechSoup. And I was also interested in Rushton's question about interesting nonprofits that you serve. Before we're done here, if you think of any, that would be really fun to. I think I know what nonprofit world looks like, but I'm sure there's some really oddball nonprofits out there if any pop into your head.
I think, yeah, I mean, I can share a couple, like, I think storytelling goes a long way. I don't know and I don't mean to get too political, but I think that I was paying close attention to what was happening in India when Kashmir was kind of brought into the constitution, and that was changed a couple months ago. It was in like August or something. And I just so happened to have had a call set up with Oxfam India to talk about their use of backup and recovery technology. And it was really interesting to hear them talk about what was going on in the country and what their role was in India at that time. And Oxfam India does a ton of disaster response and recovery. And so that area was kind of cut off by internet and services, and it was really hard to get information. But because they're a longstanding presence in the country, they were able to serve people who weren't really able to get out of the area and serve them with basic health care and bring in some non-food items and that kind of thing. And I spoke with these 4 gentlemen who are part of the IT staff of Oxfam India, and they're supporting 8 different sites throughout India. They're supporting staff who are working on things like prevention of gender-based violence and access to quality primary education in India. And so talking to these IT managers whose background, you know, they're engineers, but for them to understand that the importance of having a backup and recovery solution that's protecting the data of their beneficiaries and protecting their donors' information and financial information, they saw using this product was extremely critical to their mission. And it was about it's like an 11% fair market value that they're paying for this one product of it. And so it saved them, yeah, almost $890 or something. And that money can then go directly to the non-food items or, you know, healthcare products or pharmaceuticals that they're providing in the country. So if you do that math then of how $890 can get in India for those products, it's quite a lot.
Great story. Thanks again. And there's a lot with TechSoup I didn't realize was available. So just even your presentation and looking at the slides, I need to get on the site and make some recommendations within our organizations. These organizations I'm involved in about things that we should be pulling from your list of services. Thanks again.
And we're trying to, oh yeah.
Oh no, I just had, like, I'm just curious, what companies have you partnered with? You mentioned Microsoft, but what are some other companies?
So I personally manage our partnerships with Adobe, VMware, Symantec, now Broadcom, Norton LifeLock, that used to be Symantec, and we're about to hopefully launch something with Cloudflare. Oh, and Veritas Technologies, which is backup recovery software. Yeah, that's it. And our other big, I would say our other large partners are Microsoft, DocuSign, Box, Okta, Tableau, Autodesk. Asana is our newest and probably biggest partner now, like newest big partner. Intuit, that's just in the US and Canada. Bitdefenders Global as a cybersecurity partner. And I think the thing about these partnerships is super interesting to learn about what the companies are interested in investing in the nonprofit sector, because some are really forward-leaning and really wanting to help collaborate with us on content so that we don't only talk about what a unique offer is price-wise, but that the company then also has volunteers to help us design content specifically for nonprofits so they know how to leverage and get the most use out of a technology solution.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comment? Rory, go ahead.
There we go. Okay, I've been unmuted. I have a question, and this is probably a sign of old age. I'm the oldest person in the group, so just bear with me. I understood everything you get until you got to the capital part. Okay, now, as I understand this in very simple terms, you have something in the private sector that will magically make it through the security stuff and then will invest in something in the not-for-profit. Am I right so far?
Are you talking about the growth capital campaign?
Yeah, growth capital, yeah.
So really, well, all that is, you know how if you go to a website and they're like, donate here. So instead of asking for donations, we're actually asking for people to make investments in TechSoup. And that means you can invest $50 in TechSoup, and every year you'll
Who's investing?
Anyone, you, me, it could be a company, it could be, yeah. Okay,
well, then I expect at some point in time to get a return on my investment?
Yep. So we obviously couldn't do this alone, and so let me just bring you to our page, capital campaign.
Well, if I can just sort of explain my question real simply, if I'm putting money in a not-for-profit, I'm going to get my initial investment back plus a gain on it, right?
Yeah.
So 50, I'll get back 55.
Sorry?
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to make a profit off investing in a not-for-profit. You see the problem here? Not-for-profit, it's going to make me a profit. I mean, you see the problem?
Yeah,
I have nothing against not-for-profits. They do great things. But I can't conceive of how, if I put money in a not-for-profit, eventually I get my money back plus some gain on it.
Yeah. So TechSoup's charitable status is something that's extremely important to us, having a 501c3 in the United States.
Yep.
And $100 investing in us, that is enabling us to invest in our own capacity so that we can give out $47,000 worth of resources. And so what you're investing in is you're investing in what we're going to use that money for. And so the way that this remains charitable is that TechSoup has to we have very strict reporting guidelines where we report to the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission every quarter, and we tell them what we've done to be able to, so the proposal to the SEC is that we have 5 strategic initiatives And all of them are around doubling our reach for nonprofits and growing the amount of resources that we're increasing access to for the nonprofit sector by $4 billion over the next 3 to 5 years. So every quarter, we have to tell SEC, A, how much money we brought in, and B, what we're using that money for. And we can only use that money for things that are going to be able to address these charitable, mission-oriented activities. So we're not, that money that's going into TechSoup isn't being used to just like accumulate wealth. It's that we have to take in this money and then we have to spend it so that we can then increase our reach. And it's really a catalyst to our growth to be able to reach more needs.
Okay, that's, you forgive me, I live in Houston and we had a place that did magical things with money. You may have heard of it. It was called Enron. So ever since then, I'm just a little suspicious. Okay, I got you.
No, I mean, I think it's, no, I appreciate the question. And I mean, I think that people ask us sometimes, like, how are you different from a reseller? And I think what you have to do is think about everything else that Techsoup does. We still get about 10% of our resources from grants, and that's to ensure that we do have just like purely grant-driven initiatives. And one of those is actually the digital assessment tool that I took you through. And that tool is enabling us to actually help nonprofits in a more tailored way so that we can better meet their needs. And I think in turn, when we're able to offer things that are more responsive to their needs and that we know more about where they are along their journey, then that means that they're gonna come back to us for more things, more services, more education, more products. And at the same time, TechSoup is being invested in, and I just met like another staff member, and like we are then growing what we're doing and what we're offering to nonprofits. So I think through kind of the reason why, if we didn't, frankly, if we didn't have this growth capital campaign, we wouldn't be able to reach nonprofits with technology the way that technology is moving. So software as a service and having online memberships and that kind of thing, we frankly right now, it's very manual still for us. So we have to invest in our ability to automate all these processes globally so that we can grow the amount of nonprofits we can reach.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Any other comments or questions?
I'm looking, I think some people are, Rushton's putting some questions in the chat.
Actually, I'll jump in real quick. I was just going to say that Roy is bringing something up that's really important, which is that people have a perception of nonprofits as being, largely organizations that pursue donations for services that don't generate revenue, which is one kind of nonprofit. But I think one of the exciting things about how we talk about innovation in Silicon Valley, and TechSoup is a perfect example of this, is that you can be an entity that exists for social benefit, that generates revenue constructively, sustainably, without falling into the difficulties of previous models. Can we get another set of donations? That kind of stuff. And so it's exciting, as I see it, that we get a chance to have you as a speaker and to highlight that element of innovative entrepreneurship that I think a lot of people around the world are excited about with regard to what happens in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and to build on that, I mean, I came from a humanitarian response organization where I felt that we were too donor-driven by the priorities based on the request for proposals, and we didn't have enough flexibility to be able to drive the strategy and the needs in the countries we were working in ourselves. And that was a big reason I came to TechSoup, because we receive about 80% of our income is from earned revenue, and it gives us more flexibility to do what we see is better for nonprofits. And I think that when you, instead of going for grants and you have this growth capital campaign, it's enabling us to really do what we know is what's best for us, rather than having to be responsive to donors or corporations. The other thing I was going to say is that there's an organization called Town Kitchen that's doing a similar, it's not similar, but it's an impact investing, and they're a smaller community-based organization in Oakland. So you can check them out, and then I can send you a couple other names of organizations that are similarly trying to move away from just grant funding to invest in their strategic growth, because I think what we're trying to do is something that keeps us independent and keeps us what an NGO is supposed to be, which is, I think, really just meeting the needs and not being driven by other priorities.
Great, thanks. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, quick fact. There's a report out that says about 49% of nonprofits in the U.S. Nonprofits in the U.S. receive 49% of their income from earned revenue. And I think that's because there's a lot of models where healthcare organizations, they might be community-based health organizations, but they do charge a fee for service just to cover minimal costs. So I thought that was a really interesting statistic that I learned recently.
A more businessy side thing, you can also earn, as a nonprofit, earn income that you pay the IRS taxes on. You just split it out on the way that you report at the end of the year. So nonprofits can be very diverse in the sourcing that they get their money from. If it is more business-driven income, you just handle it differently than your other income. I did want to throw in one more funny or more side note. When you said something kitchen was another company name, that sounded a little bit like how when somebody hits it big and like Napster, everybody had STER at the end of their nonprofit or their innovative company name. It sounds like Techsoup now, everybody wants to like come up with it was Town Kitchen, right? That was the company that you named. I was like, oh, Techsoup's this big deal. And now everybody wants to put a T sounding first syllable and a food reference second syllable in their business name. When I heard that, I was like, oh, that's just a little too close to Techsoup for me.
I actually met these guys. I met one of the co-founders at, there's an organization called One World that's trying to leverage impact investing. I don't know if you guys have had a presentation from them before, but they're kind of like the triple bottom line approach. And so they focus a lot on social entrepreneur companies, and being vendors for technology companies is one of the things. So Town Kitchen trains inner city youth to do like food deliveries and stuff, and facilitate meals to technology companies. So it employs them, it trains them, gives them access to technology companies. So I just put some links there about their investment campaign as well.
Thank you. We should definitely, contact them and have them come onto our program. Perfect. So seeing as we're kind of, short on time, I wanted to wrap things up. So Rotary members and guests, please make sure you filled out the attendance section and leave us a comment. Also, if you have an awesome idea for a program, please use the link below to submit your ideas. And so thank you again, Whitney, for this wonderful presentation, and thank you all for joining us. And I will turn it back to you, Whitney, for your final words.
I just want to say thanks so much for having me. It's great getting questions and being able to share Techsoup's work. Always trying to serve nonprofits, and it sounds great that some of you have already found us and hopefully kind of continue digging in deeper. We have a wealth of resources. So please do continue to check us out, follow us. We're constantly growing and trying to offer new resources to the nonprofit sector. Check out our Go Capital campaign. And Farine can share my contact information if you want to follow up with me after.